Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. We are now on episode 8 of season 9. Oh boy, we're at the halfway point of this season. There's 8 more episodes after this, and then of course the end of show laughs thing, and then of course the VHS list. So 10 more videos in total after this. Now this is one that was written by Stephen James Meyer, who also wrote Peter on the Couch. And I think he does a pretty good job with this one. And it's a concept that, given how far into the show we are, and the fact that these characters are finally married, and I'm talking about Robert and Amy, this is a subject you knew was going to come up eventually, especially with the dynamic shift this season, with Robert and Amy now living in the same house as Frank and Marie. It's just one of those ones you knew was going to have to come up, and it came up here. Now, episode starts with seemingly Marie treating Amy and Robert a little bit nicer than normal. Now, with Amy, that is no surprise. She's always treated Amy nicer than everyone else in the immediate family, because you know she likes Amy. Now, nicer than normal, we'll stand out a little bit, but not too much. It's when you add Robert into the mix that, yeah, it's there a little bit. I mean, selectively, you know she's going to treat him better, like during the wedding. But in general, like this, nah. Especially when it comes to her making food and not giving some to her precious Raymond. Which Raymond points out is like, oh, I wanted blueberry syrup on my tongue. This sucks. And then, of course, when Marie does show up, giving Raymond a chore at the house. And Raymond asks the obvious question with this, like, hey, you got Robert over there, why can't he do it? And of course Marie devolves into her usual Marie self. He can't do it, he's busy with other things. And then doing the whole Catholic mother guilt. And Ray, he reluctantly agrees to go do it. And of course, as he's doing it, he's going up to put the shingles up. He looks into his old room, which is now Robert and Amy's room. He sees Robert come in his robe and all that. And of course, being Ray, he has to mess with him a little bit. And of course, he gets in the room. He notices, hey, there's a new mini fridge in there. And amongst other things, he starts slowly putting together why Marie is being nicer to these two. It's a little bit of Amy, but it is connected to Amy. And that is she's trying to get these two to finally procreate. She is going for grandchildren. I mean, that seems to have been her big motivation for why she's wanted Robert to marry. I mean, she said her whole thing about him not wanting to be alone and all that. But we know somewhere there is always an ulterior motive when it comes to this, and that is her ulterior motive, is that she wants Robert to give her more grandchildren. I mean, the one rant thing, Amy was supposed to give me more grandchildren. Now they're married. Her next step, especially since they're under the same roof, get those grandchildren. Of course, the mini bar with alcohol in it. Making sure that Robert is not as stressed and all that. And then her next step, buys him some nice boxer briefs because the ones he was wearing before were too tight. Obviously, making sure his gonads are not constricted to prevent sperm production or kill the ones that are there. And the moment, of course, I remember later is when it's Robert talking with Amy about it when he realizes this is all the case. When he points out that Marie has their room set at the optimum spawning temperature. Now, at first, Robert does not believe his brother. He's like, you're talking crazy talk. And of course, Ray's really trying to talk some sense into him. You're a policeman, put the clues together. And it's after Marie comes in with the boxers that Robert's like, oh my god, and realizes it. And he tries to tell this to Amy, but of course Amy is in his shoes from previous. And of course Robert is overplayed a little bit, looking for bugs, thinking that the thermostat's a bug, which typical Robert oversell, but it adds a little bit to the humor of this part of the episode. But what finally sells Amy on it is when she mentions that Marie gave him a CD, and it's a Barry White CD. This is funny for two reasons. Because one, for the clue, it's like, you really think Marie's gonna have Barry White? I mean, she could surprise us. I mean, my abuela listened to Barry White and other R&B artists like that. But as my abuela, not Marie. And of course, like I mentioned, my grandmother watching Sons of Anarchy and stuff like that. But as my grandmother, not Marie. Marie does not strike me as someone who would watch Sons of Anarchy and someone who would listen to Barry White. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any hints in the episode she would listen to Barry White. She's not going to listen to somebody that, in the words of Robert, has song titles and lyrics like, "Take off that brassiere, my dear." And the second one is it's mood music for Bow Chicka Wow Wow. I mean, Barry White's the one that always has songs like, "Ain't good enough for you, little baby." Like, stuff like that. And they talk it over, figuring like, well, we had the plan. I mean, we're not really at the plan stage yet. I mean, we were supposed to have our own house. We were supposed to have all the ducks in a row, and she's trying to get us to go there without all the ducks. And we're like, we don't have to have all the ducks in a row. So this is a nice little conversation. I like this little moment between Robert and Amy. It makes them feel more like an actual couple, and it's an actual conversation you would expect married couples to have without it devolving into yelling and all that. So it was a nice little moment. And of course, it looks like they're actually going to try, but because of the circumstance, Robert cannot get Marie out of his head, so he cannot perform. And when Marie shows up with a boombox, obviously for the Barry White music, he storms out. They end up across the street, and Marie really interjects herself in the conversation, and she really shows that how much her getting the grandchildren means to her, because she's threatening to throw Robert and Amy out of the house. Which I laugh at watching this, because it's like, unless you guys have done the paperwork, the only reason you own this house again is because Robert said you can have it back. But technically, unless you guys did the paperwork, it's still technically legally his house. So I'd love to see you guys try to kick him out if you guys didn't do the paperwork. I mean, there's a thing like a verbal contract, but I think the written contract's going to hold up in court more than your paperwork one. It will. Just saying. But they talk it down, and for now, they're going to act like they're trying even if they're not trying. And of course, Robert knows that being treated as good as he is right now is only going to last as long as it takes to, in the words that Frank would probably use, knock Amy up. But he is prepared for that. Now, I've mentioned multiple times throughout the show's run, mainly the reviews of the last couple seasons, that I've really started to not like Marie as the show went on. I don't think I put it in words such as that, but this episode is an example of that, with how she's acting towards Robert and Amy. And it's looking at it like, I know in the previous episode I mentioned, I was like, I'm surprised no one's tried to have a go at her, other than Cinnamon, Robert's ex-wife. I know that's not her real name, but I'm using her stage name. This is another example of why I'm surprised that hasn't happened. And if people say they don't like her as a character even earlier on, once we get here, I could see it. I mean, there are times I didn't like her earlier on, but later on, I don't really like using the phrase that much, but I think this is where her character starts to get flanderized. Definitely in this season, you can probably make the argument for at least from season 6 onward, but definitely here, when they have to start recycling the same trope stuff for her, you could definitely say she's flanderized. And with this episode, how she's acting, it's like that. It's like, I know she's her fascinating with grandchildren, but I don't think the Marie we've known and loved, especially early season Marie, would threaten to kick him out over that. Unless you're trying to say she's really blinded by her need for grandchildren. That said, I do love the epilogue for this, where it shows Frank and Marie relaxing in their bedroom, and all of a sudden all you hear is, which of course is supposed to be the bed moving in the other room. And then we cut to their bedroom, Amy sitting in bed with a chair, Robert sitting on the end of the bed, and he's banging the chair up and down. And he's like, I can't even do this for 15 minutes. So, looks like they are going to keep the ruse going for a little bit. All in all, like I said, this is a hidden gem of an episode. My little thing about Marie notwithstanding, it is fun. It's a concept. It is something that this late in the story is expected to go on. The writing could have been a little bit tighter, but most of that is, from what I said, the whole thing with how the character of Marie seems to be flanderized. You make the argument probably a little bit for Frank too, but he just seemed like usual Frank. And then everything stemming from that is where I think the episode is at its weakest, but like I mentioned multiple times before, part of that is also the fact that status quo, for the most part, reset by the end of the episodes. But sitcom writing, as I've always said. Definitely one I say you shouldn't skip unless you just cannot stand Marie, and just what I've mentioned about her means the episode would be unwatchable for you. Alright, now after this we're skipping over to disc 3, which one thing, since I haven't really shown off the set, since there's only 16 episodes, there's only 3 to 4 episodes per disc. It depends. It also depends on what other features they have on it. Like, disc 1 has 4, this one had 4, the next one also will have 4. Oh, they all have 4. Never mind. They all have 4 episodes. I was misreading one of them. Oh, the next episode, we're going to see the return of Amy's brother Peter, because the next one, it's an interesting concept, because it's like, who decided to ship these two? The next episode, of course, is A Date for Peter. Until then, everybody.